So, today we're going to talk about something called dissonance bias. It's that hidden psychology that explains why we sometimes defend our absolute worst decisions, even when a part of us knows we're wrong.
I want you to really think about that for a second. That time you argued passionately for that terrible purchase, or maybe you stayed in a job you knew you hated. You find yourself literally building a case for something that deep down you regret. What's going on there?
Well, that powerful urge to double down and defend yourself, it's not just you being stubborn. It's actually a super deeply ingrained survival instinct for your mind. It's a defense mechanism, and it's kicking into high gear.
And this, right here, is the core of dissonance bias. To put it simply, your brain finds it so uncomfortable to admit it made a mistake that it will literally start to build a more comfortable reality for you. It's all about protecting your self-image, even if it has to bend the truth to do it.
Okay, so to really get a handle on this, we need to go a little deeper. We have to understand the internal war that's happening inside our own minds. And it all starts with this foundational theory, cognitive dissonance.
And, this isn't some newfangled idea. It's been around for a while. It was first described way back in 1957 by a psychologist named Leon Festinger. And his work? It's still pretty much the foundation for understanding this stuff today.
So, Festinger's big idea was this. All of us have this powerful built-in drive for consistency. Our minds desperately want our actions to line up perfectly with our beliefs. You can kind of think of it like a mental balancing act that's always happening in the background. But what happens when they don't line up? Well, that's where the conflict starts. Let's use the classic example. You hold a very clear belief. Smoking is unhealthy, but then your behavior is to light up a cigarette. See? The belief and the behavior are in a total standoff. Now, that clash, it's not just some abstract idea. You feel it. It creates this genuinely uncomfortable feeling that psychologists call psychological arousal. It's that cringy, tense, anxious feeling you get when you know you're doing something that goes against your better judgment. So your brain is freaking out a little. It hates this tension and it wants it gone, like right now. And logically, it has two ways out. You could change your behavior, put out the cigarette, or you could change the belief that smoking is really all that bad. Which one do you think is easier? Yup. Almost always, we take the path of least resistance. Changing a behavior, especially a habit, that's hard. But changing a thought? Oh yeah, our brains are absolute masters of that. And so we start to rationalize. The work of changing the belief begins. So what does this mental jujitsu actually look like in practice? Let's break down the specific tactics your brain uses to justify its actions and get back to that feeling of peace. Our brain becomes an expert at what's called consonance seeking, basically finding harmony. First, it might trivialize the action. Oh, come on, it's just one cigarette, it doesn't matter. Then it gets creative and starts adding new beliefs. Well, smoking keeps me thin, and being thin is healthy, so it all kind of balances out, right? And finally, the classic move, denying responsibility. Look, it's not my fault, my job is so stressful, it makes me do it. And this reveals such a crucial point. In these moments of dissonance, your brain's primary goal completely shifts. It's no longer on a mission to find the objective truth. Its only mission is to restore that internal peace and protect your idea of who you are. And look, this isn't just about little things like smoking a cigarette. This bias pops up in some of the biggest, most important decisions of our lives. So where do we see these ego traps in the wild? Well, how about in relationships? This is a perfect example of the sunk cost fallacy, which is basically powered by dissonance. The belief is, I am a smart person who invests my time wisely. But the behavior is, I've spent 5 years in a relationship that makes me unhappy. To fix that conflict, you invent a brand new belief. We've built so much together. All that time must mean it's worth it. Oh, and we do this all the time with money. It's called post-purchase rationalization. You splurge on a $2,000 laptop you don't really need. The clash between your identity as a smart shopper and your impulsive action is painful. So what do? You convince yourself it's the best, fastest, most essential laptop ever made. You're not defending the laptop, you're defending your ego. Now, this might seem like a harmless little mental trick to make ourselves feel better, but the thing is, constantly choosing denial, it has a really high long-term cost. It actually creates something I call a growth ceiling. So what do I mean by a growth ceiling? Well, it's the absolute upper limit on your personal evolution. Every single time you choose to justify a mistake instead of actually looking at it, you are actively preventing yourself from learning the lesson. You're literally capping your own potential.
I mean, it really all comes down to the simple, brutal truth. Personal growth is impossible if you can't admit when you're wrong. If your own psychological defense system won't even let you be wrong, then it also can't let you learn, change, or evolve.
And there's another layer to this trap, something called choice supportive bias. This is our tendency to go back and retroactively paint our past decisions in a much more positive light. We remember that job we chose as being way better than it was, or the partner we picked as having fewer flaws. By rewriting our own history, we hide the failure from ourselves, pretty much ensuring we're likely to make the exact same mistake all over again.
All right, so that's the problem, and it's a big one. But here's the good news. We are not doomed to be stuck in these loops forever. We can actually learn to rewire our minds. So how do we train ourselves to lean into that uncomfortable tension instead of always running from it? The key is to practice metacognition, which is just a fancy way of saying thinking about your thinking. First, just label the feeling. The moment you feel that defensive urge to justify, just pause and say to yourself, okay, this is dissonance. Second, and this is huge, separate your actions from your identity. Making a bad choice doesn't make you a bad person, it just makes you a person who made a bad choice. And third, and this is the really brave part, do the exact opposite of what your ego wants. Actively look for evidence that you might be wrong. So, in the end, it really all boils down to one final choice. Choosing denial is the easy fix. It's like slapping a quick bandage on a problem and pretending it's fine. But real growth? That requires leaning into the discomfort. It means being willing to actually look at the wound, to clean it out, and to let it heal properly, even if it stings a bit. One path is comfort. The other is evolution. So the question I want to leave you with is this: which path are you choosing today?